See the people? It looks like 8 people have now entered the waiting room. So we'll give them a minute. And they're all coming in. So Evelyn and let's see here. Oh, there you are. Evelyn and Vangeli, if you can just mute yourselves until it's time to talk, that would be great. So hello and welcome to everyone. I know there are many things you could be doing this afternoon, and probably a lot of you are zoomed out, but I'm hoping that you'll leave here with information that will really make a difference for you. This will be recorded so you can come back to it again and share it with family, friends, teachers, counselors, whatever will make a difference in your lives. We welcome you to do. My name is Barbara Weidlein. I'm the director and one of the co-founders of majoringinmusic.com. And if any of you are music students, I highly welcome you to come and check out our website. It's full of all kinds of information, including information about summer programs. But this is an event that's for anybody who's in the arts, as you probably saw in the information on NACAC's pages. So this is designed for you if you're thinking about majoring in any of the area of the arts, so that you can look at how you can use your summer in order to provide you with some benefits that are really hard to gain anywhere else or at any other time. And it sounds like we have one of our panelists just came in too. So instead of my telling you about this, I've invited some students on today to tell you about their experiences, and they're representing different area of the arts, so that whatever area you're interested in, hopefully you'll be able to gain some good information. And I'm going to ask them to generalize if they can, but of course some of the things they're going to say are unique to their particular areas. We will open up the room to Q&A, so please feel free to put any of your questions in the chat and we will plan to get to them. And anything we don't get to, I will personally get back in touch with you with the best information I can either offer from music or from talking with other people in the other areas of the arts if I don't have the answer myself. So I'm going to start, and I'm looking, I see that there are, I'm just not seeing, there's Christian, great. So I'm going to start by introducing the panel. We're waiting for one more person. We may or may not have her because she's in the area where there's been a huge snowfall and everything is still closed, including her school. This is the Denver area where I am. But let me introduce you to the panelists we do have here today. We have Christian Gonzalez. If you want to just kind of wave when I say your name. So there's Christian. Christian is a sophomore majoring in contemporary dance performance at Boston Conservatory at Berkeley in Boston, Massachusetts. We have Evelyn Hupka. I'm gonna wave. There's Evelyn. She's a senior at Delaware Valley High School outside of Philadelphia, who plays French horn and plans to major in music. And we have Vangeli Tsompandis. He's a sophomore majoring in musical theater at Oklahoma City University. Each of these students has attended at least one, if not several, summer music programs. And so we're going to let them be the experts here. And I'll start by asking them each to briefly share a couple of things, and then I'm going to ask each of them another few questions, and then we will open things up to your questions. So my first question that I'm going to ask each panelist, and I'll start with you, Evelyn, because you're the first one on my screen. What impact did attending summer programs have on your proficiency and on your college plans? And it's fine to name what you did. I'm going to ask each of you to be brief so that there's plenty of time to go around with a few more rounds of questions, and then to have time to answer any of the questions in the room and any additional questions I may have for you. So the question, what impact did summer programs have on your proficiency in your area of the arts and on your college plans? So Evelyn, take it away. You want to unmute yourself? There you go.
Thank you. So for me, I think that the biggest thing was getting a different approach of ways that I can approach my instrument or anything like auditions or performances, and just getting more information, more knowledge about that than I would usually get from my typical private teacher or band director. And I think the other areas that I got a lot more experience with was music theory and music history, which wasn't always something that is available, and it wasn't something that was really taught at my school. So I would say that for me, those were the probably the biggest things that I got. And then that kind of drove me to go even further with music. And then eventually now I'm planning on majoring in it. So
And how about you, Vangeli?
Hi. So for me, I came from a background where I didn't really have a college coach. I just kind of did like my high school musical theater shows. And having the opportunity to just spread my wings and fly away from home and be on my own and be doing what I love most was absolutely just game changing. The intensive I personally did was at a school I was particularly really interested in, so it was like great to make that kind of connection. Um, but it was just so helpful to just be in a space with other artists that love the thing that I love, and are just as passionate too. So yeah, it was really game changing in that sense.
Great. And how about you, Christian? You want to unmute and tell us?
Sure. I think in terms of proficiency in my area, I think that it taught me most about what it means to be in the field of what I want to do, particularly dance with my summer programs. It taught me like the schedule, the rehearsals, the performances, and it really like showed me what it meant to actually do this for a living, like all day and all night, and not just like at a 1 hour class after school. I think that's what really hit me the most with all of these summer programs. And I guess it also taught me how to be proficient in communicating with people who can help me later. So like the teachers and the instructors were very keen on making connections during those times so that you can use them later and talk to them later about things in terms of colleges and auditions and ask them questions. So I just think in general it's very important to just get away from what you're comfortable with and what you're used to and finding different people to speak to.
So what I'm hearing from all of you is that your summer programs actually helped you take a leap beyond where you were before you did these programs. And for those of you in college, and I'm sure for you, Evelyn, as well, these summer programs that you took provided you with mentors as well as comrades, people absolutely as passionate as you are, which you don't always find in your high school classes. You may have classes filled with other dancers and other musicians, artists of all kinds, people who are performing with you in the school musicals, but they don't want to do this for their livelihood. They're going to go into, I don't know, electrical engineering. They're doing this because it's a hobby. You're doing this because it's what you're passionate about doing for your career. And finding other people doing that with you is a key part of what summer programs provide. So I'm going to now ask all of you, in terms of helping prepare you for college, helping you, with maybe with references or helping you get accepted. How did summer programs play into that? And I know, Evelyn, this is relevant for you too now because you're trying to figure out which school to accept. So maybe you can start, Evelyn, let's go back to you. And how would you answer how your summer programs prepared you for this daunting applying to college process?
yeah, so I think that, like I said before, just getting a different approach is always a really good idea. But they also, even the private teacher that I was working with specifically, also gave me pieces that she thought I would do well with in an audition. And they're also very career oriented at most of those programs. So they know that maybe not all of the kids there are going to go into a performing arts field, but they know that many will. And so they're much more willing to talk about that and to really help you and give you as much experience performing and with mock auditions as they can. So I think that was my experience that really helped me with my audition process this year.
Great. And how about for you, Vangeli? How did it help you with your whole college application process?
Yeah, well, it was definitely very, very beneficial. To speak just on behalf of this school, this was a school I was really, really interested in, and I did the summer program um, for OCU, and I was able to make just really strong connections with the faculty, show my work ethic. I played like the lead in the show for the summer, and I just really used that time to just get to know the school. But on behalf of going for other colleges, having like a summer program on my resume was something that really stood out on my behalf, like at other auditions. Like I remember I was auditioning for another school and they saw the summer intensive on like my resume and they were like, oh wow, like, and they knew it and they recognized it, and that was a connection I was instantly able to make. So just going into this process, not having like a college coach or that kind of thing, this was just the head start that I needed to get me ahead.
Great. And how about for you, Christian?
Um, for this particular school, I went to the college program a lot. I visited the school a lot. It was very much like the place I wanted to go. But because of all those visits, you start to make a home here. Because in the reality of the situation for most colleges, you're going to be away from home and you're going to have to travel and you're going to have to deal with that really big change. And if you were to go to a summer program in that college, it might be a little bit easier, like mentally, for you to get used to where you're going, the people there, how to get around. Like I'm in Boston right now, and I'm from Florida. I had no idea what a train was or what a subway was. So all the summer that I got to spend here and learn from the teachers and all my friends that I know now here, it really helped me have a positive mental state going to college, which can be hard for some students because it's a really big change. And I think we sometimes miss how big a change that is because it can be drastic. And also, realistically, college isn't cheap. There's scholarships you have to think about. And I believe personally that with exposure to the colleges beforehand, you have a better chance of making those connections for earning scholarships and earning financial aid. And that is very important because college is expensive, especially in our areas. Yeah.
That's great. And that's really helpful information. And I want to just add that I've worked with many, many summer programs around the country and outside of the US. And many of them do have scholarships for their summer programs, but they've always said you must apply early. Now, being a pandemic year, applying early could still be now. In the past, there were programs you had to apply for by January. You know, everything has changed right now. So at the end of our session today, and as you start thinking about the information today, I would highly encourage you to not only look at summer programs, but inquire about scholarships for those summer programs. I want to ask one more question, and then we're going to take a few of the questions in the chat. And this may only have relevance to you, Evelyn, but it has to do with, but you know, Vangeli and Christian, you may be able to weigh in some ways too. It has to do with taking a summer program during the pandemic and taking it virtually. And I say that because a lot of programs are already deciding they will be offered virtually this summer because they really don't know what's going on. And they really don't want to go through that crazy last minute pivoting. It's hard on the personnel that they hire, the professors, et cetera, et cetera. So Evelyn, you did this last summer. Do you want to weigh in? And then Vangeli and Christian, if you have anything to add to this. What was it like? And was it worth it?
Yeah, so I definitely think it was worth it. I personally went and did the Eastman Summer Classical Studies program virtually this past summer. And there definitely was some restrictions with, you know, socializing with other people. It was definitely harder to make friends. Not that you couldn't do it, but there was definitely some lack of just bonds there. But I do think that information wise, it was absolutely worth it. I learned so much during the virtual program, and it was just as rigorous as when I had done it in person in 2019. So I think it definitely depends on each program is going to be a little different in how it's run, but they were actually able to offer us different courses as well, such as Alexander technique. We were able to take that, and we were able to take I think there was a composition course that had opened up as well. Um, and so I think that you can still get a lot out of it. And in addition, you get to understand what a virtual environment looks like, because next year, if you are applying next year for college, you don't know whether it's still going to be virtual or in person. So I think that it gives you a good idea of how your instrument sounds over Zoom, and what's the best place in your house to record. So stuff like that, I think it can also really benefit in case next year you're auditioning for other things.
Great. Anything to add about virtual learning in the arts because I know there's at least one question in the chat about that.
I could speak on that a little bit. I mean, I absolutely agree with Evelyn. I say it is so worth it. I say go for it. I just think as artists, we got to adapt. And I think a lot of these programs and a lot of these schools have done beautiful, great jobs at adapting. It's just really been super innovative. And I think there's a lot you can get in like the different environments. So if you have the means, I think I'm an advocate of just doing it, you know?
Yeah, and just to add on, like I had to do a summer program online. Like Vangeli said, it definitely just, you have to take that leap of faith and be willing to adapt, because this is the world now. And before it gets better, it's better to know how to handle it, especially just like for art in general. You're gonna have to learn how to create under circumstances. And then you can take what you learn later after the pandemic and create something even better because of all the new skill sets you adapted to. So definitely just go for it.
Thank you for that. I think that it really does help you keep your edge, which is hard to do if you're not doing much in school, and you're limited in terms of any kind of performance or art show, or anything that you would have done had there not been a pandemic. I'm going to turn to the chat a little bit. I'm going to just say that we're not going to speak to very specific summer programs. And I know there's at least one question in the chat about that. I can certainly talk with you after this for anybody who's asking about specific programs, but there's so many subjective factors that go into determining whether a program is a right fit, or it's going to give you what it is that you think you need and want. On the majoringinmusic.com summer page, we do have a list of factors that you should take into consideration that can be applied. Change the word music for visual arts, or for dance, or for musical theater, for anything other than music. And you really have the same basic questions where you get to decide what really makes sense for who you are and for what you're looking for. And I would say that for the person who asked about some very specific programs. Here's a question about with spring musicals being shut down, do you advise to go out of state to get some in-person training? Now, all of you have gone out of state to get training, and whether it's a pandemic or not. And I have to say that this is a person who lives in California, and I just before this panel heard about all kinds of things that are opening up again in California. That doesn't mean they won't be closing again. It doesn't mean they won't be closing everywhere, except maybe a couple of states that seem to be a lot more lenient than most other states. But we don't know what's happening. So I think that has to be the caveat that we place in front of everything. We really don't know. So we have to this is a gamble. Everything is a gamble right now. We have to make our best guess about everything. That said, What do you think about going out of state for a summer program? You've all done that.
I'll speak on this. I am not a musical theater major, cannot sing for my life. So, but I do believe that, honestly, in my opinion, going out of state is the most preferred. Like, if you have time away from school to go on an adventure while learning your craft, I think it's totally worth it. In terms of the pandemic and seeking like personal training, and it's only found out of state, even better. Like just more of a reason to go. Um, like Barbara said, though, it is a risk. You have to make sure you take the proper precaution. That does take extra time. So in terms of all of this, you have to be prepared ahead of time. I think before we had um, to do less work. We just had to apply and hope we get in and then go. But I think there are more factors that go into it now in terms of living spaces because we can't live with more people anymore, testing, pandemic 6 feet apart. So there's a lot more that goes into in-person training, which you have to make sure you look into for like everyone's safety. But for sure, like you should definitely go 100% if you can.
I want to second Christian on that. I absolutely agree, especially with musical theater because it's extremely competitive, like the audition year. So going out of state and making connections with some program, something of your choice is extremely beneficial, especially for musical theater. I mean, there are a long list of wonderful programs to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. And I think that if you are able to do it in person, it's even better because, like they both said, you will meet a lot of people who aren't from your state and in some cases aren't from the US. So I think it's just a really great experience all around.
And I just put a link in the chat to show you how you can utilize the majoringinmusic.com list of factors to determine what the best fit program is for yourself to, change out the word music for whatever your area of the arts is. So that is in the chat. I wanted to ask each of you panelists another question, and that is, can you speak to some of the challenges that you've met personally, professionally, in terms of summer programs? We're painting a rosy picture about them, but they're challenging too in many different ways. And you had mentioned financially they can be challenging, leaving home for the first time and being in a totally different environment, even in terms of the weather. Certainly going from Florida to Boston, Massachusetts is like night and day, in terms of weather changes, but there are lots of challenges too. And let's be honest and open about them so that we can paint a balanced picture here. Who would like to start with that? Okay, Christian.
A realistic picture, because we are in the arts and like Vangeli said, it is very competitive. You're going to meet a lot of people who have the same amount of like intense drive as you and will do nothing, to stop at nothing to get what you basically want. And that is just a big realization that I didn't see coming. Of course, you make friends, you make connections, but all these people want what you want. They want to succeed, they want to thrive, they want to create. And sometimes in terms of an audition, which can happen at summer intensives, it can get very competitive and it can get sometimes very ugly, especially for dance, because dance is very like physical, it's very like based on your appearance, people get very, very hurt very easily. So I think when you're applying to summer intensive, any summer intensive, whether it's visual arts, like you have to be confident in yourself and you have to be very passionate, because once it gets really hard, your passion and your drive and your love for what you do is going to be the only thing keeping you there. And if you lose that, if you don't see what you have that is worth sharing, it's going to be miserable and you're going to give up. So I think while you're there, just make sure you have time to really understand why you're there and you have time to make this decision for you and not for anyone else, because it's never perfect, but it's fun.
I want to second what Christian just said. Going into a competitive summer music program, you are with kids that were also the lead in their high school and that were also the first chair in their violin and all of the above. So like Christian said, it is very competitive. For me, it was my first time leaving home. I'm from Florida and I went to Oklahoma, and that is like crazy. So there was also that like sense of, I am like away from my family. And there was a little bit of homesickness in the beginning. But what I wanted to add is ultimately, as like fun as it may be, it is hard work. It's a lot of hard work, and fun is like kind of the byproduct of working hard. So, I mean, going to these intensives, you're going to make friends. It's going to be wonderful, but you're there to learn and grow. And with that, there will be challenges. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what they both said. And there are going to at times be people who are even more, either just more trained than you, or they have more experience than you. And I think that it sometimes is easy to see that and to just look down upon yourself at that point. But I think that you have to take it as a learning point, and you have to kind of take what they're doing and you have to say, okay, what can I take from that, and how can I use that to better my playing or my performance? So I think that, but I think it is sometimes easy to get into a downward spiral when you see a lot of people who are really good, or like Christian said, they have the same drive as you, and it kind of can be intimidating. But I think that if you just take it one step at a time and look at how you can improve, I think that that's the most important thing in that situation.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to just go ahead, Christian, and then I want to make a statement about visual arts, because the person we had for this panel from visual arts is the person who I think may be snowed out today. Go ahead, Christian.
I was just going to mention that Evelyn said something very, very important. She said there are going to be people that are better than you. I think sometimes when people apply to summer intensive, they aim lower than they're capable of. And you want to aim higher. You want to be surrounded by people who are frankly a lot better than you. You want to say, oh, I can never get in there, or I don't know if I can dance there, or I can play there, or I can act there, because you want to be intimidated, honestly, because that is going to push you to be just to meet their level. And once you meet their level, you're just going to go up from there. If you go somewhere that you feel is where you're at right now or below your belt, it's a waste of time. You're not gonna push to be greater, and that's what the goal of all this is, to just be greater than you are now.
Thank you. So I want to mention this about the visual arts because somebody brought it up, I think in our NACAC, our last meeting, that the visual arts can be a very solo kind of an area of the arts. And during the pandemic, it's been extremely difficult on a lot of students. So if you're someone who's looking at a summer program from any area of the visual arts, animation, graphic design, it may be even more important in order to meet other people, even if it ends up being virtually, to be able to learn from and to be able to have camaraderie with, especially after being so isolated this last year. So again, everything that all of our panelists have been saying really fits with every area of the arts, not just their unique area. And I hope you're all being able to translate it. We're just about out of time here. I want to just ask one more question that pertains to something that Amelia asked in terms of advice for applying to summer training programs. If you were to give one piece of best advice in answering Amelia and probably everyone else who has that question but didn't ask it yet, what would you say? What's your best piece of advice for, in addition to all the wonderful things you've all already said, what's your best piece of advice for someone who's thinking about a summer program? Christian.
For me, I was told this and it helped me a lot. I think the best way to think about it is just be curious. Just, if you're wondering about it, look it up. if you have questions, call the administration, ask them. Just don't stop being curious about what it is. Don't get intimidated by the fancy website or the people that come out of there. Just ask questions. It starts with questions, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Going off of what Christian said, I would say definitely do your research on where you're planning on applying, or after you've done some research online, asking questions is always good. But just do your research before applying and see which programs are you really interested in, and which ones are the ones that you will then narrow down to apply to and go to.
I agree with both of those. On like, I guess a more sappy note, my advice is to stay joyful, keep your hope and keep your joy, and know that you're still in high school. You don't have to go into this and be like perfect. The reason you're getting training is because we're all like imperfect in what we do and we want to reach more that level. So give yourself some grace in this and know that you can do it.
That's excellent, excellent advice. And, you mentioned about, not being perfect. And of course, that'll be forever true, right? I mean, it's true about all of us. Any area of the arts is an ongoing, continuing education experience. Anyone who thinks that after 4 years, you're done is barking up the wrong career tree, because it's a never-ending experience, right? That said, one of the best things that I think a summer program offers is the opportunity to ask for and get plenty of feedback, so that by the time your summer experience is over, you have a really good sense of whether you still really want to go on and go into this area. And with everything that our 3 panelists had to offer about, how their summer programs actually bumped up their interest level, it's a win if you go to a summer program and realize that you love this, but you don't want to do this that much in college, let alone in a career. That is a win. It's money well spent. It's time well spent. And you know that you need to look for some other area that you want to focus on. Just as important as realizing that you're even more passionate than you thought you were. So we are pretty much out of town. We're pretty much out of time. The session was recorded. NACAC will send a link to it for anybody who came in late. And I'm being reminded that there is another workshop that starts at 6:15 Eastern, preparing and applying to visual arts programs, BFA degrees, the portfolio, how to prepare, and you can sign up through the NACAC Focus Fairs on the www.virtualcollegefairs.org. So you haven't missed anything if you missed which we all did, our visual arts panelist. We hope she's safe and well. I want to thank our panelists. You've been just terrific. I have never met these panelists before. They were all highly recommended from their schools. Evelyn actually contributed to an article on majoringinmusic.com about summer virtual music programs, so I knew that she was going to be great. But wow, I couldn't have asked for better panelists, and as if we had rehearsed this, which we never ever did. So thank you all. Thanks everyone who came to this, and do look for the link that you're going to receive from NACAC. And thank you, NACAC, for making this possible. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful rest of the Performing and Visual Arts Fair. Take care. If you want to contact me directly, just look for majoringinmusic.com and I will respond. So thanks to all of you, and take care. Bye-bye.